hello booktube, and welcome back to your daily Penguin, our tour through my Penguin classic wall that can take us anywhere to all the far-flung reaches of the literary universe. And we saw some Penguin hardcovers, we saw some Penguin Classic Deluxe editions, and we have now moved into, I suspect that for the foreseeable future, we'll be doing just ordinary black spine Penguin Classic paperbacks. I just don't know what they'll be. Every once in a while, I'm sure we'll hit some sort of thematic vein. But for today, we have an anthology. Penguin Classic, in addition to reprinting all sorts of canonical works, often does original anthologies, and they are tremendous fun. What are you doing? What are you doing? They can be tremendous fun. I am a connoisseur of, a fan of anthologies. I like to see the shapes they take. I like to see the ways they reflect the vision of their editor, or don't, if they're done by committee, or if the editor is being timid or lazy or phoning it in. What are you doing? Bean, I can't concentrate if you're thrashing around. Do you want to see your fans again? Is that why you're acting up? Oh, oh, look at your face. You've got your hair all over the place. Why are you acting up? Maybe she wants to go out again. Could be. Could be she wants to go out again. It's fairly warm and humid here, so I'll take it easy. I took her out yesterday. We have one long walk in the afternoon usually, and we launched ourselves. It's so much fun. We both look forward to it. I get all my work done, she gets all her napping done, and then we go for a long walk together. And we did that yesterday, but it was hot and bright, and this dog overheats. She overheats really bad, and unlike other dogs I've had who overheated, she doesn't care. I've had other dogs, old fat beagles, one particular basset hound, who were prone to overheating, but the minute they started to overheat, they wanted to stop, they wanted to lay down, they wanted to roll in the grass, they wanted to come back home, and this dog doesn't. She will just go until her brain fries, so I have to watch out for her. But anyway, today we're doing such an anthology, and it is the Penguin Anthology of Victorian verse. And this is, I don't know if you can tell, but this has been battered and beaten and reinforced and then reinforced again, because I go to this book often. I love poetry anthologies, and I go to this book often. This is edited by Daniel Carlin, and it is the long Victorian era, so the whole of the 19th century, and a toehold in the 20th century. So not just the life of Victoria, but a little bit before and a little bit after. And the selections here are wonderful. Of course, in an anthology, even one this big, there are always going to be things you wish were in there that aren't, if you're familiar with the period. But I have very few complaints with this as an anthology of poetry. Very few. I absolutely love it. It is, it and its cover are a further example of something that I think is a bit of an embarrassment to human literary history. Was a contention that I made on this channel many times, and long before there was this channel, I was making it in person over wine and calzones to literary folk, and that is the Victorians did it better. And when people question did what better, I say everything. They did everything better. Archaeology, history, science, medicine, playwriting, exploration, government, you name it, and they did it better. Very much including poetry. I believe that the long Victorian era, as a creative output for fiction, poetry, nonfiction, history, biography, puts to shame any other human era. Easily overshadows the Italian Renaissance, for instance, easily overshadows 5th century Athens, just easily does it. And if you believe that, I don't know how many of you do, I do, but if you believe that and you look at an anthology like this, it's just going to be brought home. There are no bad poems in this anthology, except the ones that are trying to be bad, except the Victorians had a perverse sweet tooth for doggerel and syrup, and they knew it. They were perfectly aware of that tendency in their own aesthetic taste, and some of them wrote for that. But long, epic verse, dramatic short verse, comic verse, nonsense verse, pastoral verse, it's all done better here. It's all than any other era. It's just incredible, absolutely incredible. I'm not 100% sure. I'm not 100% sure that George Bernard Shaw is a better playwright than William Shakespeare, but it's a lot closer than people think. I know that's totally a déclassé to say. You cannot praise Shaw. You cannot praise, God forbid, Kipling. And you certainly can't rank them alongside the people like Shakespeare. But nevertheless, I guess what I'm trying to say is I'm an enormous fanboy of the Victorian era. So a huge book of Victorian verse is right up my alley, and I go back to this thing. I pull it down all the time, which accounts for its shape. I would be definitely looking for a new version of this if Penguin makes one. But I thought for the occasion of a poetry anthology, we would read some poetry. We'll start with Thomas Lovell Beddoes. It was a name probably won't be known to any of you who aren't familiar with the Victorian era, and this is called The Phantom Wooer. A ghost that loved a lady fair, ever in the starry air of midnight at her pillow stood, and with the sweetness skies above, the luring words of human love, her soul the phantom wooed. Sweet and sweet is their poison note, the little snakes of silver throat, in mossy skulls that nest and lie, ever singing, die, oh, die. Young soul, put off your flesh and come with me into the quiet tomb. Our bed is lovely, dark, and sweet. The earth will swing us as she goes beneath our coverlid of snows. And the warm leaden sheet, dear and dear is their poison note, the little snakes of silvered throat, in mossy skulls that nest and lie, ever singing, die, oh, die. It's just totally creepy. The idea that these spirits are standing by the bedside of their lovers, constantly urging them to cross over and sleep in the bed of the earth underneath a cover of snow. Oh my. Then we'll go to Ebenezer Jones. Again, not a name that will be very familiar. Didn't live for very long. The headstones of a lot of Victorian artists, writers, biographers, poets, are horrifying in how short the numbers are, how close they are together. Not everybody lived to be 300 like George Bernard Shaw. This is called High Summer. I never wholly feel that summer is high, however green the trees or loud the birds, however movelessly I, winking herds, stand in field, ponds, or under large trees lie, till I do climb all cultured pastures by, that hedged by hedgerows studiously fretted trim, smile like a lady's face with laced prim, and on some moor or hill that seeks the sky, lonely and nakedly, utterly lie down, and feel the sunshine throbbing on body and limb, my drowsy brain in pleasant drunkenness swim, each rising thought sink back and dreamily drown. Smiles creep o'er my face and smother my lips and cloy, each muscle sink to itself and separately enjoy. And I love the way that the poem actually evokes high summer, cows standing in pasture ponds to cool themselves off. It evokes high summer in the act of negating it. The poet is saying, I don't consider any of these things high summer that I am so perfectly describing until I have slipped away into a high pasture alone, stripped off all my clothes, and laid there simply absorbing the sunlight like a lizard. I love the juxtaposition there, that you're getting a tour, a beautiful poetic tour of high summer, but it's not real. The thing in the poem is making it real. That's just wonderful. And we will finish up with Christina Rossetti, who will be known to quite a few of you, the author of Goblin Market, among many other things. I have read this poem on this channel before, but it was years ago. And it's a poem called Uphill. I think it's just lovely, and in addition to just itself, its own intrinsic merits, I also think it's one of the best poetic evocations of Christianity that I know of, without ever invoking the word. It takes the form of call and response. Someone is asking questions, and the poem is answering. Does the road wind uphill all the way? Yes, to the very end. Will the day's journey take the whole long day? From morn to night, my friend. But is there for the night a resting place? a roof from when the slow dark hours begin. May not the darkness hide it from my face? You cannot miss that inn. Shall I meet other wayfarers at night, those who have gone before? Then must I knock or call when just in sight? You will not be kept standing at that door. Shall I find comfort, travel sore and weak? Of labor you shall find the sum. And where will there be beds for me and all who seek? Yea, beds for all who come. I just love that. I know I'm supposed to love her longer and more epic poems more, but I love that. That really gets to me. And so does a lot of other stuff in this. This has everything from the very serious stuff. The whole of In Memoriam by Lord Tennyson is in here. It has a large amount of Browning, a large amount of, I think the whole of the Rubaiyat is in here. So it has the long stretches of sonorous, very serious Victorian poetry, and it also has ditties and sing-song snatches of other stuff, the stuff that isn't anybody's idea of high art. When I sat in the cafe, I thought to myself, they say all they like, they may talk all they like about what they call pelf, they may sneer all they please about eating and drinking, but I cannot help it. I cannot help thinking how pleasant it is to have money. Hey ho, how pleasant it is to have money. And on. There's even illustrations in here. You get gibberish and nonsense plays or poetry, as well as all the big sonorous stuff. And I won't hit this too hard, but I think if you were to ask an objective, non-committed, in other words, not a poet, editor to make a similar in page count anthology of American verse in the 20th century, I think you would probably see something of what I'm talking about. The whole of the world is in this book, is in this one anthology. The whole of the world, all the registers, everything you'd care about, every kind of emotional movement, every kind of intellectual challenge, in a way that I don't think poetry does anymore. And I think it's absolutely wrong for critics to blame that on anything other than poetry. There's a very good reason why the average reader has no interest in poetry anymore, why poetry volumes are slim and usually don't sell. There's a very good reason for that, and saying that reason is a failure of the educational system or a change in cultural mores or any of the stupid answers that I've heard, I think lays the blame elsewhere than where it belongs. If a genre is failing its readership, it's the genre's fault, not the readership's fault. But one way or another, we can have, that's a debate for another time, but one way or another, poetry was most certainly not failing the Victorians. They passionately loved it. And this volume is, I have other Victorian anthologies, but this is my favorite by far. I go to this more often even than I do the Victorian parts of the Oxford Book of English Verse. So that is your Penguin for today, and it is a very strong recommendation. If you like reading poetry, or if, more importantly, you don't like reading poetry because it doesn't make any sense to you, because you read modern poetry and you think, okay, well, I don't even know what that is. I don't have any idea what the poet's talking about, and it's not beautiful, and it's not memorable, and it's not rhymed, has no rhythm. It looks like I could do it. It looks like the poet just wrote sentences at random and then stacked them vertically. Well, anybody could do that. I could do that. If you read modern poetry and it strikes you that way, you might consider not condemning the whole genre. Instead, try the poetry of other ages, of other eras. Try Victorian poetry. I bet you'll love it. So this is, of course, a recommend. I would recommend an anthology of Victorian poetry anyway, but this one is particularly good. So that is your Penguin classic for today, and we'll move on. We'll move on tomorrow. Who knows what we'll encounter tomorrow? Could be anything. So we'll reconvene here tomorrow and find out. Thank you, BookTube.